Hello, good morning to all of you. Myself, Dr. Santosh Lakshman Khilare, and I am from Shardabai Pawar Mahila College, Shardanagar, Baramati. My subject is chemistry, and today I am going to discuss on the introduction to the nanomaterials. The nanomaterials, also known as the nanoparticles, have the various applications nowadays, and it covers almost the every field, that is from agriculture to the various technologies, electronic devices, and memory storage devices. So it is necessary to know about the nanoparticles. So in this lecture we are going to discuss the nanoparticles, what is meant by nanoparticles, and what are their properties. So first thing, the substance which have the 1 to 100 nanometer size is called as the nanomaterial. At this level, the various physical and chemical properties are alters. So to imagine how much it is small, let us consider this example. This is the human hair, and which is have the size 1 millimeter. So if we cut it 100 times, then it becomes the 10 microns, and that is the size of the RBCs. Again we cut to the 100 times, then it becomes the 100 nanometers, which is the size of the viruses. So below that 100 nanometer, the nanoparticles are ranged. So why it is important? First things, it changes the various properties, that is the gravitational forces are negligible for these nanoparticles and electromagnetic forces are dominant. Then to study the nanoparticles, that is energy and motion of the nanoparticles, the quantum mechanics is used instead of the classical mechanics. Then it have the greater surface to volume ratio, and which is important for the catalysis purpose, especially in the heterogeneous catalysis. This surface to volume ratio is very much important. Then nanotechnology, it is a study of the phenomenon and manipulation of materials at atomic, molecular and macromolecular scales, where the properties differ significantly from those at the larger scales. So in this diagram we can see that the color of the particle it changes at size changes. So the spectra is also changes. Then importance of the nanoparticles. Nanoparticles nowadays are very much important in the energy storage devices. So before the nanoparticles in the 1982, the large volume is required for the storage of the memories, but nowadays the memory chips are very much small sizes and everyone can afford the price of the memory devices. Then history of the nanoparticles. The scientifically first nanoparticles are prepared by the Michael Faraday. So he is doing the experiment in which he is just etching the gold plate, and he saw that the gold changes its color from yellowish to reddish pink, and that color is known as the magenta. This material have the colloidal properties, that is it shows the Tyndall effect. So Tyndall effect is generally shown by the solid particles, not by the true solutions, but it looks like a true solution, and therefore it named as a magenta, which is also stored in the British Royal Institute. Then historically various nanoparticles are also formed in the 15th century, 4th century and 12th century. The Damascus blade, Lycurgus cup is also made up of the nanoparticles. In the biology, the lizards are used the techniques or the forces, van der Waals forces of attraction are of the nanoscale. Then classification of the nanoparticles. Though nanoparticle is a very broad term, it is broadly classified in the various categories. So first is carbon-based nanoparticles. The nanoparticles which are made up of the carbon and organic compounds are known as the carbon-based nanoparticles. Then metal nanoparticles, generally inorganic nanoparticles are the metal nanoparticles, ceramic nanoparticles from the ceramic material, semiconductor nanoparticles which are used in the semiconducting devices, polymeric nanoparticles which is mostly organic in nature and have the various applications, and lipid based nanoparticles, so biologically derived nanoparticles. So these are the examples of carbon based nanoparticles. The graphene is one of the important carbon based nanoparticles, then single wall carbon nanotube, multi wall carbon nanotubes, then fullerene. Then metal nanoparticles. Metal nanoparticles are of various types, that is nanorods, nanocells, and nanocages. So one dimensional, two dimensional, three dimensional nanoparticles of the metals are formed and have the various applications. Then ceramic nanoparticles for the decorative purposes, these nanoparticles are used. Semiconductor nanoparticles, mostly used in the semiconductors and other electronic devices. These nanoparticles which maintains the band gap between the valence band and the conductance band. Then polymeric nanoparticles have the various applications in the polymers and lipid based nanoparticles, mainly in the drug designing. These lipid based nanoparticles are used. So when the drugs are injected, so it requires the carrier which is the biocompatible, and these liposomes are used as a nanoparticles for the drug delivery. Drugs can be loaded in these liposomes and which can be delivered. Then it goes towards the target liposomes. Then mRNA carrying lipid nanoparticles are also there, which are used in the biology. So this is about the various types of the nanoparticles, and these nanoparticles are used in the various fields. So according to their properties, or we can change the properties by changing its shape and size, so it can be applied in the different fields. So okay, this is about the various types of the nanoparticles. Then there is a synthesis of the nanoparticles. In the synthesis, there are two approaches for the synthesis of the nanoparticles. First is a top down approach and second one is a bottom up approach. In the top down approach, the bulk material is converted into the small particles, that is the nanoparticles, and in the bottom up approach it is a chemical method. So true solutions are very small atomic level, molecular level particles are converted into the nanoparticles. So this is about the introduction of the nanoparticles. Thank you so much.